Chief Executive Officer of Cocoa Board, Joseph Boahin Edu, says the low pricing of cocoa on the international market, despite the current shortage of cocoa in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, is creating suspicions of deliberate attempts by the global cocoa and chocolate traders to perpetually keep the price of the commodity at its lowest. According to him, the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a natural surplus of cocoa in both Ghana and Ivory Coast for 2021, which kept prices lower. And despite the huge shortages of the commodity in both countries for supply, prices are still down, fueling some suspicion. The CEO was addressing senior cocoa value chain actors, multinational companies in cocoa and key sectors at a meeting hosted by the Cote d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative in Accra to deliberate on the sustainable solutions for a more thriving cocoa industry with a focus on living income differential and country premiums. Well, joining us now for more via Zoom is Public Affairs Director at Cocoa Board, Fifi Boafo. Thank you so much for your time. But even before we start the conversation, you do know that the Republic of Ghana, together with Cote d'Ivoire, are currently pursuing a joint cooperation on investments with regard to cocoa pricing. We'll bring you some updates shortly. But for now, even before we get to Fifi Boafo on that, the Chief Executive Officer is raising some concerns about what he believes may be sabotage on the international market. Fifi Boafo is back on Zoom. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. So what do you suspect as Cocoa Board may be the fault in the international market for which the prices are not soaring as of now?
Well, the chief executive indicated this at a meeting we had with major international buyers in the cocoa industry. And his view is that in economics, whenever there is oversupply, it leads to falling price. And of course, when demand outstrips supply, definitely its effect is that price will increase. But if you look at the price of cocoa product, at a time where production was higher than demand on the market, the price was low. Presently, production generally in Ghana and also in Cote d'Ivoire, the two major producers, supply is on the low side, but it still do not see the effect in terms of price. So that's why you question the fact that is there something deliberately being done to suppress price, because at a time where you have low production, it should automatically lead to price increase, which we are not seeing. So that's the basis of the question the chief executive asked at such an important meeting with the big players within the industry.
Right. And for those who are not very much conversant with how the pricing is done on the international market, give us a sense of how that is done on the international market and how that influences producing countries such as Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Okay,
so generally, what happens is that there's a futures market where prices are determined, and in recent times, algorithms generally determine the price of cocoa product. But there are institutions that determines that, okay, within this period, this is how much cocoa is selling, largely based on what is being offered at international price. And usually, just like any normal trading activity or any normal business, based on product availability. And these buyers have researchers and then, of course, institutions that also do forecast to tell that this is the quantity of cocoa or this is the quantity of the products available on the market. Based on that, then we are able to say that, okay, then there's a high likelihood that there will be shortage of cocoa products on the international market, which definitely will have an effect on price. And in the same way, when there's also the possibility or when there is the forecast that price will also, production will grow more than the market can afford, it will also have an effect. So this is how the market operates. And then the question we are asking at this point is, considering what production levels are at the moment, we should not be experiencing a situation whereby the price is still very low, which is having effect on producing countries and farmers who are dependent on what is derived from the market.
The government banked its hopes on the joint cooperation with Ivory Coast. Many experts say we should have been protectionist in nature towards our cash crop. What's your take on that?
If you say protectionist, exactly what are you?
And at least the corporation, as we're seeing, is not yielding that desired result. The finance minister was backing that move of trying to work together to fix the market price. But it appears that's not paying off. It's not working, is it?
It has not achieved the desired result. However, you will not be able to say it has failed. The reason being that if you realize, for example, the living income differential is as a result of the agreement between these two countries or the cooperation between these two countries. But you've also realized that at the time of introducing the living income differential, which is bringing in $400 every ton of cocoa sold from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we've seen another means of making sure that we do not have the full potential or undermining what the living income differential is supposed to do for cocoa farmers. And that has to do with the country differential, which countries derive based on quality of cocoa that is produced. That is the more reason why the meeting that was held with all the international buyers in Accra. So yes, it has not fully realized the potential, but it has not failed. And that is the more reason why we are also not sleeping or sitting back to say that, well, we don't have the full potential of it, so we should let it go. We are making sure that we realize the full potential of the living income differential, which is an offshoot of the cooperation between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire.
Fifi, are you not worried that there may be dire implications for the Ghanaian economy and also, by extension, the farmers themselves who are the receiving end of all of this?
Well, if you pay attention to the outcome of the meeting that was held, that should give you an indication that, well, it is not a matter for worry, but it's a matter for making sure that the set target is achieved. Because after the meeting, almost all the international big boys, if you like, within the industry signed to ensure that any such steps as we've realized that seeks to undermine the living income differential, which of course improves the income that we are able to bring in into the country, and of course the farmers, we protect that income. So yes, we've achieved something from that Friday meeting, which points to the fact that this is not something for us to worry, but to make sure that we stick to the arrangement put in place, which seeks to only improve our economy and also the income of our cocoa farmers.
Are you on a course to review the LIDs, or perhaps it will remain stable for some time?
Well, the LID is not being reviewed at the moment. We believe that it's a good initiative that is bringing in extra income. However, we felt that there were means that was being used to undermine the result from the LID, and that was the reason why we called for that meeting. Of course, the meeting has been able to achieve something. We have been able to indicate strongly that such moves that seek to undermine the benefits we seek to derive from the LID will not be tolerated. And of course, all of them have come to the agreement that, yes, they will respect this. Bear in mind, it's an international trade. Right. In as much as we as country, we seek to get the full realization of the benefit from these arrangements, the people you are dealing with will also seek to find means of making sure that you do not stand to benefit to their disadvantage. So they'll come out with ways that seeks to also wash away or chip away part of the benefit you are going to realize. And then the discussion and the negotiation shall continue.
And Fifi, I have just a minute to go, but I'm interested in finding out from you, in the wake of the IMF decision by government, obviously the cocoa sector generates significant revenue for this country. The belief is if we're able to turn around the sector, then we could be able to turn the tides very quickly. What are you doing as an authority, Cocoa Board, to try and, of course, show up our revenue measures?
Well, it is, if you look at what the IMF is asking for, or what the country is asking for from the IMF, that is within a very short period of time. So it will be difficult for you to say that within this very short period of time, you can't overnight turn the fortunes. However, the government policy is that we are able to process more of our cocoa, and the target is to do a minimum of 50%. I think over the past 5 years, we've been able to move from 23 to about 40% of the cocoa. So gradually we are pushing towards that realization. And it's our belief that if we're able to do more value addition, this will be able to improve the revenue of the country.
Fifi Boafo, I'm grateful for your time. Let's cross over now to Parliament. Of course, we're getting indication, just on the last note that we ended on the IMF bailout. We understand that the delegation in the country is meeting the Finance Committee there. Let's cross over to Kweku Asante, who's our parliamentary correspondent monitoring events for us. So Kweku, tell us about the latest engagement. Has that meeting with the IMF delegation started, and what more can you report?
So, Blessed, a few minutes ago, a number of cars arrived in the precincts of Parliament, which we are told is being occupied by officials of the IMF. We've also just seen members of the Finance Committee just file out of Parliament, ostensibly to go into that meeting. So, it is expected that that meeting would have started by now, or if it has not started, it is just about starting. It's a closed-door meeting; it's not open to the media. But we are picking feed from our sources within the meeting that as soon as the IMF officials are ready to listen to Ghanaians, what the minority on the committee are seeking to say is that government is not reporting the right figures to them, and that they must look at the books and make a determination. I spoke to Alhaji ABF Hussein. He's not a member of the Finance Committee, but he has his ears on the ground. He says he's very much interested in this negotiation that government is having with the IMF. What he has been telling me is that government has been cooking figures, that is his words, allegedly, and government presents different set of figures to Ghanaians and then presents a different set of figures to the IMF. And so once the negotiation with the IMF concludes, Ghanaians will get to the point where they will get the full picture in terms of what the numbers really are. He says that the economic situation is worse than the government is reporting now, and he's urging his members, the minority members on the Finance Committee, to press that the IMF gets the accurate figures. In the other day, when IMF published some of these data, then Ghanaians will have access to it. And so it's said to be a back and forth meeting. From what I've picked so far, the minority are entering this meeting to insist that government has mismanaged the economy, and also that government is not presenting the true state of the economy. And so the IMF would have to open their eyes, so to speak, to be able to get the data that they want. The majority side, on the other hand, very much content with the issues that have been raised so far and the explanation that have been offered by their government. And so it's expected to be this kind of a political divide between both sides, and it will be interesting to note what the conclusion will be.
Give us a sense of how a majority is going into this meeting, knowing very well that they may be antagonized by the minority side, who are even claiming that the figures, for instance, are not accurate.
So what the majority MPs want to do is to try and get a buy-in of their colleagues, because these are people who are meeting from the IMF. Let's not go there. Let's not create scenes. Let's try and go with a united front. The minority insists they are not trying to embarrass government. All they are trying to do is try and present a set of data or a set of arguments that will tell the IMF that they should be much careful with the kind of data they are receiving from the government side of the negotiation. We know that even tomorrow was the day scheduled for the media budget review. But the Deputy Finance Minister has just announced to the media that government will do so next week after negotiation with the IMF concludes. What we are picking is that the negotiation, the talks that have started so far, government will get some sort of data and some sort of expertise and some of decisions that they will put into the media budget review as a result of the talks that they will be holding with the IMF. And so majority side going into this meeting to try and defend the viewpoint of government that this is the true state of the economy. We are trying to present to you our own homegrown policies so that you give us the backing so that we can get the credibility that the market deserves.
How long are we expecting this engagement to last?
Well, this meeting, because it's just familiarization meeting, ordinarily it's not expected to last for so long, given that the IMF officials arrived very much on time, just before 4 p.m. They arrived here in Parliament. It's expected that by 5 p.m. or by 6 p.m. this meeting would have concluded. But for such meetings, sometimes you cannot just tell. A few details might come up which will drag the meeting for a few hours. Parliament itself is sitting, and some MPs themselves will probably want to come back and continue the business of the House. So what we are expecting is that between now and 6 o'clock, this meeting would have concluded. There are some who are telling us that this meeting will end probably much faster, but there may be a few details that may come up that will drag this meeting for some time.
Is this meeting exclusive to members of Parliament only, or besides some more government officials who've been negotiating with this delegation since somewhere last week, as we understand?
So the information we have is that this meeting is IMF officials meeting the Finance Committee of Parliament. And so the central plank of members of Parliament from the Finance Committee will be represented. Given how we know the committees operate, other members of Parliament who are not even necessarily Finance Committee members who show up to try and participate in the meetings, although they may not be Finance Committee members. But given the way some of these work, I will not be surprised, for instance, if officials of the Finance Ministry also come into this meeting. Sometimes it's very much necessary so that some questions and answers that are needed will be thrown to some of these officials. But it's not expected to be high level, the ministers themselves or their deputies. It's supposed to be some technical officers from the Finance Ministry supposed to join to try and give the meeting a certain fair background in terms of the kind of information both sides need to be able to hold talks. But because Parliament itself is not a party, strictly speaking, of these IMF, it's just government, the executive, the Finance Ministry, representing government, and then the IMF. What the IMF officials who are coming into Parliament today are seeking to do is to try and get the viewpoint of Ghanaians. I will not be surprised if in the coming days IMF decide to hold other public hearings or even decide to meet some civil society organizations to get their thoughts on what kind of deal they should be able to give government to be able to support the economy. And so it's the key people who are expected to be in this meeting are MPs, but there may be a few officials from the Finance Ministry who will be coming to provide the necessary support and answers.
Kwaku Asante would be in Parliament to bring you some more updates.